see that it's 2:50. I'm Sue Cox. I'm one of the UMEC members, and I have the pleasure of moderating this session. This is one of our first innovation festival sessions, and so we're looking forward to a great afternoon. Each presenter is going to present their innovation in 12 to 15 minutes, and we'll have some time for questions and answers. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. If you're shy, you can do that, and then I'll read them off. But we'll pretty well stay on time because we have one more session this afternoon when we get done. I don't know about y'all, but I think this has been a great faculty development seminar series, in spite of being virtual and not in person, where we could really get to network some. So without further ado, I'm going to interview the first presentation. It's an interactive study guide for the Obstetrics and Gynecology clerkship. And I believe Allison's going to present.
Yep, that's right. I'm going to share my slides here. All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Allison Schmidt. I am a fourth-year medical student currently at Indiana University. I'm applying OB-GYN and in that delightful lull after interviews, so I'm happy to be here, although I wish maybe we were in Florida. But I'm accompanied by Dr. Chrisman here today as well. She's our clerkship director at IU. I'll be presenting today what I'm calling an interactive study guide for the Obstetrics and Gynecology clerkship. I'll talk a little bit about kind of why I developed it, what some of my goals were, and I'll try to spend most of the time really demoing it. I've included a link on the Whova page as well as in these slides so that you can actually download it. I think that's the best way for it to be viewed, and ideally that would be in person, but in the virtual space, I'll do my best to demo it. So as I kind of entered the end of my third year of medical school, I was really kind of reflecting on this transition from the preclinical to the clinical coursework and just how different that is. In that preclinical phase, obviously things are a little bit more regimented, and you really understand kind of what you need to study, what you're going to be tested on. And then as you kind of transition to the more of that clinical, obviously your exposures and your experiences in the hospital are going to be different, and your exposures to different patients are going to be vastly different than your peers. And then added to that challenge, every single clerkship felt like a whole new learning curve where you had to figure out what resources were available to you and what was expected of you to actually learn for that clerkship. I also have the opportunity to act as a tutor as well. And so some of this, is reflected based off of their experience as well as my own kind of personal experiences. So along with kind of figuring out what to study, I think there's, a big potential for kind of resource fatigue. Just with the OB-GYN clerkship, there's several textbooks, all of which have, different information and, different merits to them. There's several video series, online med-ed, APGO videos. And all of these are great resources, but a lot of different resources. And all of these are really passive, more reading and watching videos. There are some more active styles that students use, things like UWorld, Amboss, Question Banks, Sketchy, which is a kind of different video format that has some kind of mental mapping aspects of it, and then Practice NBMEs. But all of those have a giant paywall. So all students are, if you want to use these resources, obviously you have to pay for those. So a lot of those active sources are pay only. So I was really kind of thinking at the end of my third year, like, what is the perfect resource that I wish that I had? And so I really kind of just sat down to create this study guide. So my main goals really were to make it targeted. So really the target audience is OB-GYN clerkship students who are getting ready to take their shelf exam, or perhaps reviewing the OB-GYN material for step 2. I felt like OB-GYN in particular was a steep learning curve for a lot of my peers as I was talking to them, just because the preclinical exposure to women's health was pretty minimal. I also wanted this to be really interactive. So to me, the more that I can kind of engage with material and use more active recall, the more that'll stick. And so I wanted to make something that you could really kind of have a hands-on approach to. Kind of along with that, I wanted it to be really dynamic. So my particular learning style, I am very much a visual learner. And so I can remember kind of a unique slide and recall that. And so I wanted to reflect that in this as well. So every slide is a little bit different. And it also really targets several different learning strategies. So whether that's people who like looking at tables, there's options for that. There's practice questions. So really trying to appeal to a large audience. And then, as I alluded to, I think structure and adding some organization is really nice. So adding something that was going to kind of give you a guideline of what types of things you should be studying. So I really followed primarily the APGO learning objectives for the clerkship to kind of build the structure. And then, as you'll see, really provide a lot of additional outside resources as well, just to help students kind of narrow in on where to find that information rather than spending a bunch of their time looking to where they should be finding that information, if that makes sense. And importantly, I really wanted it to be flexible. So I wanted it to be something that you could do, either sit down and complete it all at once or do it by section. Perhaps you have a patient who's admitted for preterm labor and you want to just review that section. I think that kind of flexibility is really important as your third year student studying. And then finally, very important to me is free. I think one of my biggest gripes about medical school is the additional costs that you don't see just to be able to study and learn medicine. So I will switch over now to kind of my demo of the actual tool. Again, this is something that I put the link up so that you can download yourself. So as you kind of go through this, this is really just kind of a user-friendly how to use this, what to click on. But I'll kind of walk you through it as I go. So as I kind of mentioned, big thing for me was going to be usability and flexibility. So table of contents here really is designed so that you can jump around to each individual section and find your way back pretty quickly. So for example, if I wanted to go study preterm labor, I can take myself to the preterm labor. And then I can return myself back to the table of contents. Now I chose to do this in PowerPoint for a couple of reasons. One, because I think PowerPoint is something that most students have access to with Microsoft Office. And two, because PowerPoint actually has a lot of very powerful kind of animation features. So all of these things that I'm showing you are truly just using the animations that are available within PowerPoint. So here's my kind of demo. This is not a part of the regular. This is me just doing some demo slides, and I kept it beach themed so that we can pretend we're in Florida. But just kind of walking through all the various kinds of slides that I have. So first, kind of our resource slides. So every single section starts out this way, highlighting what videos are available with actual links to those videos that are relevant to that topic, as well as highlighting the chapters that are relevant within a couple of selected textbooks. I also include practice questions. So I wrote 40 plus practice questions that are kind of following NBME style in here. And as you can see, my little brain, so these are just an opportunity for me to kind of provide additional information as students want to engage a little bit further. So these add a little bit of extra information. This one, for example, kind of a test taking strategy on how to approach this type of question. As you go through, you also have these little brains to why that something is or is not the correct answer, for example. I also use quite a few tables. So again, all of these are very interactive. So if you wanted to try to quiz yourself on the respiratory physiology, you can kind of click and reveal the answers to yourself. Something I call mixes and matches. So again, another kind of style where you can kind of click on each of these boxes to reveal the answer so that you have the opportunity to kind of think about it first before you go and reveal the answer to yourself. Matchups are just another way of doing this. So for example, here's a teratogen matchup where you can kind of click and reveal the answer and quiz yourself. Where I can, I include kind of small case examples as well, trying to have at least some, small little nuggets of things you might actually see in the clinic. So here's an example of benign conditions of the breast. So you can again reveal the answers. Here's another example of kind of some functions of the little brain guys. So here, providing maybe some buzzwords that you might see on NBME exams, as that's pretty common that you might see some like commonly reflected phrases in these question stems. And so trying my best to kind of make those connections for students too within the document. Sometimes I have more informational slides that are maybe harder to fit into like a table or things like that. And so even then I try to make them so that those are still really interactive and you can try to quiz. And here is another little icon resource. So where I can as well, I try to highlight risk factors. That's a very large thing for the OB and NBME particularly, is keeping an eye out for risk factors within question stems. And then finally, at the end of each kind of major section, I try to include what I call rapid reviews. So these are just really short questions that you can really quickly kind of quiz yourself on. So that's kind of it for the demo. I'll just switch myself back to these slides. So all in all, the whole final product, it's 218 interactive slides through PowerPoint, covers 39 major topics with all of those with kind of those external resources available, and then has about 44 practice NBME questions. So the way that this has kind of been incorporated, I really built this, and then Dr. Chrisman, our clerkship director at IU, was able to do some content review. And then we were able to kind of roll it out to students to be able to kind of really use it and get a feel for the interactability of it and provide feedback. So currently it's available to all of our IU students through a couple of Canvas pages that we have. So our kind of general clerkship Canvas page, as well as more of a study tips for all phases of medical school as well. A quick note on kind of effectiveness and using this to see if there was any sort of score changes. We've considered looking at those types of things. However, at this time, we also had a pretty big change in our clerkship structure, moving from 4 to 6 weeks during this time that we implemented this. And so most of kind of the feedback that we've gotten has been more kind of anecdotal and qualitative. The things that students have highlighted to me about it, though, are really a lot of the flexibility of it. So the ability to very easily kind of jump to a section and see what's relevant, what study or what chapters they should study, what videos they should watch on that topic. So having everything kind of all in one place. And then again, also just being able to kind of interact with it. That was really something that I wanted as a dream resource. And that's been a lot of the feedback from the students as well. So this is really kind of my last slide here. So this QR code will take you just to a box to be able to download it, as well as this link. Again, I really think the best way to view this and to play around with it is to download it and use it in presenter mode and kind of dive in through that table of contents and see kind of the functionality of it. But I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
All right. Thank you, Allison. What a great presentation. I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative, and I know that y'all have about 360 or 70 students in Indiana. Do you know if all of the students use this tool?
So it's available on the Canvas page that's available to all students. And so it's not necessarily something that all students are required to use. It's just available as a resource. And so I don't know what the user kind of uptake has been across all of those students, but all of them have it available to them.
Okay. And how long have you had the app working?
So it was developed really, I would say, in the spring of last year, and then was more rolled out in the last several months to the students on the Canvas page. So really just in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 months, maybe.
Because I wonder, if you'll be able to start tracking students that are going into Ob-Gyn, if they'll use this before they leave Indiana to go on to their residency, and then student residents using it during the first couple of months of residency, just for quick refreshers and all. Anyway, very, very good. Let's see. Do you orient the students to the app? Is a question from Bob Dean.
Yeah, that's a great question. So recently I did kind of present it to the most recent kind of clerkship students just to kind of get them oriented. The goal of it is that it's something that is pretty user friendly. So it kind of orients you to itself a little bit. That was kind of a goal that I had, that anybody could pick it up and just figure out how to use it. And that's another thing that I am kind of constantly updating with feedback. If people are clicking in places that they think should work and it doesn't, then I can kind of adapt to that. But the goal to me is that I don't need to physically orient students to this, that this can just be its own entity.
I also wonder how many students would use it prior to taking USMLE. You've gone through the clerkship. That may have been 8 months ago. Now you're taking step 2. What a rapid way to relearn Ob-Gyn.
Yeah, and that was kind of, I mean, personally for myself, you mentioned kind of getting ready for OB/GYN residency. And I know even I could stand to go through this at the end after kind of my attrition over 4th year. So that was really the goal too, is something that's kind of a quick refresher, but you can also dive in as deep as you want to go.
Great. That's all the questions I've seen in the chat. Other questions from anyone? Please unmute yourself and ask away or throw it in the chat. Let me ask another question then, since everybody else is being shy. Are we able to take this resource and let our students use it on our campuses?
I would love that. Yes, it is downloadable that you can take and use. My ultimate goal will be to kind of submit it to something like a MedEd portal that would be universally available. I am happy to share it as a resource. Again, my biggest thing is about having these resources be free and accessible to students. So that's my primary goal.
Before you share it with MedEd portal, talk to Helen Morgan, the incoming chair of the UMEC committee, the APGO UMEC committee, about putting it on APGO's website as a resource.
Oh, perfect. I'll do that. Thank you.
And then one last question. The impact of of this tool would be great. It's unfortunate that, well, it's not unfortunate that you went from 4 to 6 weeks. How did you do that? Oh my God, nobody gets extra weeks. But that you weren't able to track it from the get-go.
Yeah, I definitely would love to have a little bit more, I think, data around how it's being used in particular. And so I think I'd like to see something kind of further on with that, but probably looking at scores and things, unfortunately, is confounded at this point.
Okay, great. Sarah, do you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I can't find the raise hand button. I just, Allison wanted to say, I don't know if you're able to follow the chat, but from all of us clerkship directors out here, we've all cannot believe what an extraordinary amount of work. And I think we just all really want to congratulate you on an amazing piece of med ed like curricula that many of us have already downloaded and will use, and just thank you for your hard work. We really, really appreciate that. So congratulations on an amazing product.
Thank you so much. There's a lot of me just learning what PowerPoint can do. So
this is great. Absolutely great. No further questions? All right. Thank you so much, Allison.
thank you very much.
A round of applause. I'll introduce our next speaker now, if you want to stop sharing, and that will be the peer-to-peer online learning module for fetal heart rate tracings to complement clerkship learning. And I believe Miriam is going to be our presenter. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'll present. Yes. Thank you so much. Allison, that is an amazing resource. I wish I had that when I was in medical school. That is awesome. I will start sharing my screen here. All right. Okie dokie. So, hi, everybody. My name is Miriam Raffeld. I'm one of the PGY2s at Temple Hospital. Dr. Rose is also on. She is moral support today. I am the resident chair of medical education and teaching at Temple Hospital. And so I do work closely with the medical students. Medical education is a passion of mine. I am going to be presenting today on a peer-to-peer online learning module for fetal heart tracings to complement clerkship learning. This is actually a project that was completed by one of our own 4th year medical students last year, Gabriella Lobitz, and unfortunately she could not be here today. So I am presenting really on behalf of her and the work she did while she was at Temple as a medical student. So, here we go. So what is this resource? And I think Allison mentioned this as well too, but I think a big thing as a medical student is cost. A lot of things that are online are wonderful resources, but they do cost a lot of money and everybody is already paying money. So the key is free, easily accessible, easily digestible, and something that won't take all day, hopefully. So this is a web-based standalone module with quizzes. there are 2 tests. So there's a 12-question pre-quiz to test your baseline knowledge of fetal heart tracings and management. And then there's about a 3-minute video that I will show a little bit of that Gabby made, going through different cases, explaining what different decelerations look like. And then there's an identical post-quiz to actually assess the improvement of knowledge and effectiveness of the video for these students. All of the content, again, is completely free and available to anyone with internet access. The objective of this module, Gabby had rotated, I think, through 3rd year. And really, fetal heart tracings are something that are widely, visible. I mean, that's what we watch when we're on labor and delivery, and the students have to know how to interpret it, why we're suddenly jumping out of our chair to run to a room and resuscitate a patient. But they don't actually ever really get any exposure to fetal heart tracings prior to clerkship year. It's not something that's readily taught 1st and 2nd year. It's not on step 1. And so it is something that is a separate part of medical education. And I always thought as a medical student that OBGYN was kind of its own field of medicine. It truly is so different from everything else that we learn those first 2 years. So it's here to instruct 3rd year students on reading, interpretation, and management of fetal heart tracings. And as I mentioned, it's just not something that is often tested on board exams until you get to your shelf exam. So what I'm actually going to do is just switch quickly and share Gabby's, just a moment of Gabby's video here, if I can do this. Let's see. Sorry, 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing just 1 moment and reshare. Yes, so I just wanted to show a little bit about what this looks like. So this is actually the pre-video test. It's just a Google Drive. It's easily accessible. The students put in their names. They kind of say where they fall on understanding the basics on how to interpret and manage fetal heart tone strips. There's basic questions of how to define an acceleration, how to define moderate variability. And then it has these questions just giving a fetal heart tracing, and again, just applying that knowledge that you're learning. So this is the pre-test. And then Gabby has a wonderful video of which I'll play just a moment.
Welcome to the module.
So I'll start
Fetal heart
here.
tracings measure mom's contractions and baby's heart rate. Any woman admitted to L&D for induction of or inactive labor will receive a fetal heart tracing, as well as women getting non-stress tests, biophysical profiles, or contraction stress tests.
So she goes through an introduction.
Of a typical
she then clearly describes in relation
section measures baby's heart rate in beats per minute.
How the heart tone is actually in relation to the
10
maternal
beats per minute,
contractions.
and the thick red lines represent 1 minute.
You can see here that
The
there's
blue line
different slides, and there's actually, let's see if I can pause.
Let's discuss variability. Variability is next. Let's talk about accelerations.
So she kind of goes through
about decelerations,
and then variable decelerations.
But you can hit the volume button on top and mute it.
Sorry, and mute it. I'll just get rid of it just so you could hear me. Sorry, guys. But you could see that the whole video is just step by step going through a fetal heart tracing, explaining to students in, again, a very digestible way of how we interpret fetal heart tracings, and why we stare so intently at those strips on the floor. So I will go back to the other screen. I apologize all, I'm just going back and forth here. And so I want to talk about the results, which is actually the most exciting part. So Gabby made this video. She has the pre and post test. And what I want to emphasize is, so the questions just on decelerations alone. So defining a deceleration. On the left, you can see the pre-module assessment. On the right, you can see the post-module assessment. The green arrows essentially show that there was improvement. So the blue is the correct answer. And you can see on the left, as compared to the right, there's much more blue on the right side. So the majority of students actually got the correct answer as compared to previously. There's an improvement on the post-module assessment as compared to the pre-module. And this is specifically in the type of deceleration that you see. And then in terms of management, the pre-module assessment, you can see on the left too, these are more case-based questions, and the students, again, the blue is the correct answer. And so on the right, you can see that more students had the correct answer. That middle area here, you can see there was a slight actually decrease in the number of students who had the correct answer. We were reviewing this, it's actually kind of interesting. I do think that it's an explainable decrease. The question had fetal heart tracing that showed minimal variability with one variable deceleration. And so some students said that it would be appropriate to start an amnio infusion. And so I do think they still understood the concept at least, but just didn't have enough clinical practice to really get the exact right answer, but it was good. It had them thinking, and is understandable why students would have chosen that answer. The other exciting thing from this is that you can see that students actually felt that they understood it better. You can see here on the left that the pre-module assessment, the majority of students really did not feel as though they understood the basics on how to interpret and manage fetal heart tone strips. The majority had 1s and 2s and 3s. And then on the right, you can see that after watching the video, really the majority of students then felt as though they could understand the basics. There was 1 or 2 here that still didn't feel like they fully grasped the concept, but I would say overall it was a very big increase. For the sake of everybody listening to this, is something that's posted on our Canvas. All of our students actually, it's required by the end of the first week here. It's very simple, easy to watch. In total, let's see, the video is 3 minutes, the pre and post test, anywhere from like 2 to 10 minutes. And so the whole thing really is less than 20 minutes to get a much better understanding of fetal heart tracings. And you can tell too that our students really loved it. We had some supplemental materials listed as well, the practice bulletin on the management of intrapartum fetal heart tracings, as well as this website, which is the www.ob-efm. So this is actually a great website and has a ton of resources where Gabby did pull the tracings. This also has a ton of information for students as well, but again, it's a long video and might be a little bit too high level for medical students. So these are the links. I kind of showed you already the pre-module assessment and what the video entails. And then the post-module assessment is the same as the pre-module, but just essentially one question different. So in terms of looking at the results and conclusions of this, I know Gabby spent a lot of time working on this. This was actually her senior project. Almost all of the students, 83%, felt that they really understood the basics of how to interpret and manage fetal heart tracings after using these materials. I know that it's important too to try to be as objective as we can as well. So having everybody kind of understand the basics of monitoring and why we intervene, and seeing that we try to potentially avoid any unnecessary interventions. And then aim just to provide appropriate treatments without regard to race, class, religion, or gender identity, that this is something objective to look at the fetal heart tracing to treat patients in labor. So these are the objectives, the references. As I mentioned, this website is also a fantastic resource for students, but it is much more in-depth. So this is something that is kind of easy to access, free, and hopefully will be used by all. I know that was her goal in creating this, that medical students across the country would find it helpful. So I'm not sure if Dr. Rose has anything to add, but it was pretty wonderful.
Just that I think the students both appreciated that this was a 4th year student teaching them rather than coming from myself or even Miriam. I think there's something to be said when it's somebody so close to you. I think the way she her voiceover on the video is a lot more approachable than probably mine would be. So I think it's a nice touch to the resource. She did a great job. She worked really hard, and we're sorry she's not here.
Excellent presentation, Miriam. Thank you very much. The questions in the chat were to post the links, which Marissa's already done. And then Tom Arnold, will the video pre-post test be put in with the other APGO resources for our use?
Yes, so the links have the video and the pre and post, but we'll also have it set up onto to connect to the resources with this topic, this Innovation Fest. So
I
you
think it should actually
either way
be uploaded already.
be uploaded. Okay.
Great. And another comment that this is an area where the students frequently say they don't get adequate training. I think some of our interns feel like they don't get adequate training in reading fetal heart rate tracings either. I hate to date myself, but back in the day, we didn't have PowerPoint presentations. We did everything on those old Kodachrome slides. We literally took a shoebox into labor and delivery and pulled the strip in and made a window so people could look at it and would pull the strip through and say, what do you see now? What do you see now? We modernized since I went through labor and delivery. Any questions from the audience? Right, I don't see any. Great presentation.
I was going to ask a question real quick. I was going to ask if you thought about doing any other types of topics with a similar method.
So I will say, I think that's a great idea. I think there are topics that are in OBGYN that really aren't taught first and second year. So I think it should and could be applied to many other topics. I haven't personally taken that on, but I do think that is something that if anybody is interested in, I think it would be a great resource to have kind of these like really kind of small bite-size info on different topics in OBGYN.
Excellent. Other questions? I see no hands, nobody's unmuting. Thank you very much, Miriam. That was great and what a wonderful resource, and we appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Thank you.
Our final innovation to be presented today is by Dr. Cynthia Abram, and it's an obstetrics and gynecology clerkship app focused on completion of the APGO medical school educational objectives. Cynthia, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Let me try to get onto my Google Chrome here. I guess I can't switch between browsers, huh? Give me a second here. And I might actually have to get off the meeting temporarily. I apologize.
All right, we'll wait for Cynthia to come back and share her screen and her presentation. Everybody enjoying the meeting so far? I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. That's great.
I can comment a little bit while Dr. Abraham is coming back on. Oh, here she is.
Cynthia, if you're talking, you'll need to unmute.
There we go. My name is Cynthia Abraham. I'm the Associate OB-GYN Clerkship Director over at the Icon School of Medicine in New York City. And I'll be presenting an obstetrics and gynecology clerkship app focused on completion of the APGO medical student objectives. Can everyone see, the various tabs up on the top of the screen?
What tabs in particular?
There's one that says Google Sheets, Glide, My Drive.
No, we're not seeing
Okay.
that.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to go through each one by one, unfortunately. All right, so anyhow, in terms of the concept of this app, it was to provide medical students with a mobile application granting rapid access to APGO videos corresponding to various medical student objectives, and also to augment longitudinal learning. So in our clerkship, we tend to utilize a clinical skills assessment card, and I'm going to pull that up here.
You'll need to unmute again.
I'm just trying to figure out a better way to do this. You know what? I think I'll just go into the presentation itself, and then I will actually just go through the mechanics of it then, instead of going back and forth.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So we're seeing your presentation now. But not hearing you. Cynthia, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah. So can you see my presentation though?
Yes, we see slide 4, medical school
Okay.
student objectives.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially what we did was that we utilized 16 of the APGO medical student objectives in order to create the app. So essentially what we did was that we have our home screen here, and then when one clicks on the home screen, one is immediately taken over to the mission of the OB-GYN clerkship. And then we did have multiple screens as well. So what we did was that, as you can see on the lower row here, we have home, APGO medical student objectives, additional resources, schedules, and clerkship team. And then whenever one clicks on the actual APGO medical student objective, they're actually taken over to a series of links to APGO educational topics, as well as basic science videos. So you can see here that, for example, if one wants to learn about preconception care, they can either click on an APGO educational topic video or a basic science video, and then once they click on that, they'll immediately be taken over to the actual videos. And then what we also did was that in our additional resources area, we did create a bunch of links that would take students to resources that were not necessarily APGO related. So we have our student guidebook, our list of student responsibilities, guides to help them use EPIC, triage templates that they can use to easily evaluate patients in triage, as well as all of our lectures. And then we also had various other miscellaneous items such as medical student exposure policies, anonymous feedback forms, etc. And then we also decided to provide students with rapid access to their schedules as well. And then the last thing that we had on here is access to the members of the clerkship team. So you can see over here on this slide, this is all the members of the clerkship team. So the big question is, how is one able to necessarily create this? That's the big money question. So I am going to change, hopefully, I won't have any more technical difficulties when I'm changing screens around. Let me do that. And then, so the big question is, as I said, is how does one go ahead and create this? So essentially what one does, they essentially will go to a Google Sheet, and then they end up creating the actual Excel sheet. And then the reason why it's very important to go ahead and create the actual Excel sheet is because this is where all the information will be, this will be the source of information to be put into the Glide app in order to go ahead and generate it. So in regards to that, sorry, I'm making everybody so dizzy here. Well, the next step would be go into the Google Glide app. So once one needs to essentially put in new project, and then one will then be able to, click on a new project, and then once one does that, then it'll ask for the source of the information. So in regards to what it eventually all ends up looking like, I'll show an actual demo of what the app is once you put in the information into Glide, etc. Is that once you're able to do all that, and essentially there are a few steps that need to take place. So I'll just kind of show a quick example here. So if I go into Google Sheets and I click on continue, and then click on the spreadsheet that I had made, which is the Icon School of Medicine sheet here, what will eventually happen is that this is a very, very rough draft, but you can kind of toggle through, and then you can start to adjust the tabs on the bottom as desired. So once you've done all of that, then I will go and show the final project.
Cynthia, we're not seeing that document.
You didn't see the Google spreadsheet?
No, unfortunately, it didn't advance.
Okay, let me see if I can, did anybody see the Excel spreadsheet though?
At the beginning, I think we got a little glimpse of it.
Okay, so I will show so this is what Google So this is what it kind of looks like when you end up generating. So you have one tab in which you have your data resources over here. And then what will eventually happen on the second one is that you have a series of tabs that you can go ahead and modify. I guess for this thing, the colors are just not that pretty, unfortunately. And then ultimately, after you've kind of gone through, kind of cleaned things up, then when you click on this final tab here, this is where you can start to modify all of your access. So then what does it look like at the end? So I will show what it does finally look like. And it ends up looking like this. So can everybody see the app?
We can see the app in the little ISMS.
Yeah, so this is what it looks like at the very end. So you see that when you click on here, you'll take into the mission statement. And then when you click on the APGO medical student objectives, as I had mentioned, when you click on, like say, for instance, let's go to number 4. And then when you click on the APGO educational topic video.
Meet Suvi, the magical all-in-one countertop kitchen robot.
Well, that's the last thing we want.
APGO educational topic number 9, preconception care.
Yeah, so you can easily be taken to the links over very quickly. And then in regards to accessing the additional resources, the way this would work is that, say that I want to refresh my memory on electronic fetal monitoring. For me to be able to get access to it, I need to have logged into a Google Drive. So I did click on it, but unfortunately it's opening up into a completely separate screen. But anyhow, so essentially what happens is that students, they'll receive this link, which is ismms.obgyn.glideapp.io, and then they can download it onto their iPhone, or they can even download it onto their desktop as well. So if you click on this icon on the upper left upper right-hand corner that says install ISMMS OBGYN. That's a way that you can eventually install it onto the desktop. So because it's a Google-driven app, in order to be able to access all the additional resources, students must have a Google type account. So over at the Icahn School of Medicine, we have, I got an alert here. Can everybody see the app? I just kind of got booted off for a second.
No, we're not seeing the app now.
Okay. So anyhow, I think I'll just go back to the presentation, I suppose, or I'll go back to the app. I think that'll be easier.
Now we see the app.
Yeah. So in terms of the app, the way to be able to access any of these files is all students must have a Google connected account. So over at the Icahn School of Medicine, there is a link between the Google Suite and all mssm.edu accounts. So that's how students are able to get all of the access to the lectures. And then the same thing applies for the scheduled. And then in terms of the clerkship team, what's nice about this is that once you click on any person, you'll be taken over to another screen in which you'll be able to directly email them and also directly call them as well. So in regards to the app, it's been very favorably received. And in terms of usability and favorability of presentation, it's been rated a 4.3 out of 5 on both of those parameters. And we've been using it since April 2021. And students have found it to be very, very helpful in terms of fulfilling all of their clerkship objectives. And then I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation just to kind of show, or rather the PDF, just to kind of show like a brief schematic on how it is constructed, because unfortunately I'm not able to do it in real time. And this is what it looks like here. So as I mentioned, you have the Excel spreadsheet, gets generated into Google Glide, and then eventually get taken over to that screen that I showed before, in which you have the separate tabs. And this is our final project over here. So I would like to thank Dr. Catherine Chen, Alita Bustamante, our clerkship coordinator, Michelle Francis and Stacey Burchetto, Ann Wu and Merle San Gabriel for their help with this project. And I sincerely apologize for all of the technical difficulties here.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was great. It looks like an awesome app in spite of the technical difficulties. And Sarah said she made an app using Glide, and she said it wasn't technologically challenged for those of us who are. So any questions for Cynthia? Does it automatically create the QR code is a question.
Yes, it does.
How long did it take you to create the 16 objectives to do all that?
So in regards to, well, I picked the 16 objectives first, and then I would say to find all the pertinent links to be able to connect each objective, to conduct the videos to each objective, maybe take about a day or so. But in terms of just trying to figure out the logistics of plugging everything in and trying to make it user-friendly, that took another couple of days. But I think I was also trying to learn how to use Google Glide to begin with.
Have you seen a change in the MBME shelf exam scores if you use the shelf exam since the students had access to the app?
No, we actually haven't, but that's a great point.
Okay. And then Holly Cummings asked, does this replace a course website in terms of posting your orientation videos, student schedules, etc.? Or do you use both the app and a website?
Yeah, we do. And we use both the app and the website, but we mostly use a course website just because the medical school mandates us to. But we find that students like having things at their fingertips with the app.
Okay.
But what it has started to supplant is that we used to give a lot of materials in paper form. So we've shrunk down the amount of paper that we distribute to students by easily about 50-60%.
Okay. Your clerkship director, Catherine, has put in the chat, Rachel, what would be excellent is merging this app with the PowerPoint guide. And Catherine says what it replaced is the binder you used to give out. So have you thought about merging the app with a PowerPoint guide for presentations?
The app with the lectures that we present.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant from the very first lecture, like the very first like roundtable discussions, thinking about that guide, like to all of those objectives and videos and kind of merging that, like some of that content into your app. Like all in one, you have your syllabus stuff. I love it. Just loved all the stuff. I was thinking, how can I combine these all into one entire app?
Oh, that was a comment.
Yeah.
Literally a comment, sorry.
I wasn't so sure.
Questions from anyone? We have a quiet group this afternoon. Hearing no questions. I want to thank Ben. We'll wrap up and give everybody a little break before the workshop, which starts at 3:35, I believe. Is that right? Christy, what time do we start the next workshop? Anybody know?
4:25 or 25
4:25.
after 25
Okay.
minutes after whatever time zone you're in.
Okay, so we'll give everybody a little break, but I want to thank the three presenters today and their presenting their innovations and being willing to share that material. It was great. We look forward to seeing more good things from you, and we wish you a great day and enjoy the next workshop. Thanks, everybody.